This is the SpeakOut campaign, a youth initiative dedicated to promoting public speaking and civic engagement. We interview prominent speech and debate competitors along with various youth voices and activists. Today we'll be speaking with Audrey Barrios, a top LD debater in West Virginia and captain of our team, on female representation in debate. We'll be discussing the differences in accessible resources across states, ways to bridge the debate gender gap, stereotypes in rounds, and adapting to circuit debate. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Hi, Audrey. Really excited to get to talk to you today. How have you been?
Hi, it's really good to see you too. I've been doing pretty good. How are you doing?
Pretty good. It's not that early, but it still feels early for me. So we're
Yeah,
getting through it. Back to school,
I know.
But
First few weeks are always super hard.
definitely. But for everyone else, this is Audrey Barrios. She is second in West Virginia Lincoln Douglas debate and competed at the National Catholic Forensics League in 2023, the Durham Academy 2023, alongside winning several tournaments such as the Ryle Haunted Invitational in 2022 and Marshall University John Marshall Tournament in 2023. She is also seventh in the state in impromptu speaking, and she is a captain for her speech and debate team. And in her free time, she cooks and works as head sound technician for her school theater. So very cool stuff going on there. And I love how we got to shout out the Ryle Haunted Invitational, since that's a classic tournament for my school. Um, but I'm just curious, Audrey, how did you get started in speech and debate? Like, how did you find out about it?
So, I actually got started because my sister got involved in speech and debate during the whole COVID era generation. So, she's actually 2 years older than me. And so, she got involved in speech and debate because we had a really good teacher, Helen Freeman. Love her. So, she was a theater teacher and she got involved. My sister did speech for a really long time. She was a captain her senior year before stepping down. And then she's like, hey, whenever you get into high school, you should really do speech and debate. I think you'd be great at it. And so whenever I actually got involved and I actually started seeing what was happening, I thought I would really love to get involved in debate. And so even though I did debate is my focus, I also do impromptu speaking and I just like to talk on my feet. It's really interesting to me.
That's awesome. I really like how there's kind of that legacy going on in your family. Do you have any younger siblings?
I don't, I'm the youngest in the family,
Okay,
sadly.
okay. Got it. But that's still really fun. But what does the debate community look like at your school? Because I know in West Virginia, it's definitely more traditional, kind of similar to
Mhm.
my own state, and it's really different compared to maybe the northeastern ones or California.
So the debate community in my school is actually very close knit. So what happens is we are necessarily on a schedule and we kind of just work ourselves. So the captains run everything. So necessarily this year, I created a schedule. And so what happens is I created a teaching schedule. And so once we finished teaching, we necessarily started writing cases. And as we work and I start teaching other things, such as blocking, such as case writing, such as specifics within it, and things that new debaters need to learn and don't need to learn like immediately, and that should be learned as they go. And especially new things that I know I needed to learn. A lot of things I do based on experience. Like some things I didn't know at my first tournament, I want them to know. A lot of things is um, previous experience that I wish I would have known. I'm passing on to younger debaters so they know whenever they go into their first tournament.
Got it. Okay, I think that definitely is something that I relate to on my team as well, where a lot of, at least the debate competitors, not so much the speech ones, we teach ourselves and it just kind of continues down and trickles down with all of the knowledge and expertise that people have. And I think that definitely takes a lot of time to build up that sort of knowledge, but after it gets going, it's super helpful because I feel that sometimes it's even easier to learn from another student compared to a coach, because sometimes these coaches haven't even done debate before, which is completely fine, but it also just is that added layer of not quite understanding what it's like to be in that student's shoes. So
Mhm.
what is the resource situation look like at your school? Because at least for mine, a lot of times we end up having to resort to buying briefs just because we don't have enough people to research. And
Yeah.
obviously with seniors, they're busy. So how's
So
that at your school?
it's very similar at our school. So a lot of times we buy briefs, but we also do a lot of individual research. So it's usually up to the debater themselves to research for their entire case. Like we block out individual research days. Like we usually spend up to 2 weeks on research, like on our own. And sometimes we'll create team briefs. And so we'll share information. We'll just kind of work together as a team so we have enough information to actually be prepared for the tournaments themselves. So our resources are kind of limited, especially being in a traditional bracket and being from West Virginia, but we still do our best to be prepared for tournaments.
Totally get that. And evidence sharing is major at my school as well. We have this saying where it's that there's no such thing as stealing, it's just repurposing all the information. So we'll just be copying and pasting out of other people's documents, and it's all cool because we all do it, and it just makes each of our cases better. So being that you've been involved in debate for as long as you have, do you feel that girls are proportionately represented in this activity and are they involved enough?
So I think it really depends where you're looking in, like, geographically. So in certain parts of West Virginia, they're definitely disproportionately spread. So wherever I'm from, there's not a lot of girls in debate. So at some local tournaments, I'll be one of, say, 5 girls debating. But at other tournaments, such as state levels, there's going to be more of an equal spread. And especially at nationals and CFL, there were a lot of girls. I think it really depends where you go. Especially in local tournaments, I feel like there should be a better, like, an equal spread. I feel like that could be better done through what schools are there, and it could be because there could be all girls schools, all boys schools. It really is just depending on who's at the tournament.
I agree with that. I think once I end up traveling to more cities to debate, I always find that there's a lot more girls there. But when it's
Mhm.
just in my locality, sometimes I'm even the only girl at the tournament competing in debate, which is off-putting to say the least, at least when I first got started. But why do you think it's important for more girls to try debate?
I think it's really important for girls to try to debate because I've seen a lot of bias, especially against girls. So, especially because of my locale, there's not a lot of girls. Like, especially on my team, I was one of 2 girls starting, so it was me and my mentor. And even so, we're a small district of LD, and even as we've grown, there's been a lot of, like, there is a more equal spread. There's a lot of dudes, and I feel like PF is even more affected by this because it's more logic. And a lot of girls feel, I don't want to say scared by this, but I feel like we need to normalize people just jumping into this. Like, there's a lot of stigma behind this as well, I think, because a lot of girls feel like they can't go into this because they're not logical, and that girls shouldn't go into this because they don't need to speak up. They shouldn't talk about things. They shouldn't do this, that, or the other. But that is absolute BS. They should talk about this, and girls should speak up. Like, I'm an LD debater, I'm loud. You have to. Like, that's the only way you're going to make it in this world.
I love that sentiment. And I think it's very true what you say with the differences in different events, because just from what I've seen as well, there's a lot of guys that go into PF compared to the amount of female
Mhm.
teams that I see. And I think Congress especially has a lot more female debaters. LD is pretty good as well, but I think it's just that dynamic of being able to go at least on your own. I think that's more appealing to females in general, since sometimes it can be hard to even find a partner if you're the only girl at your school, since sometimes the guys will just pair up and then you don't have a PF partner. At least that's what I've seen in my cases. But have you had any personal experiences with gender related bias at tournaments? And has this changed depending on the events you've competed in? Because I know you've done a couple different debate ones.
So I actually have. I've changed a lot about how I dress because of gender related bias. So my first year whenever I started debating, I dressed in button ups, I dressed in pants. I did very androgynous. I didn't do a lot of feminine makeup. I didn't do red lipstick. I wear red lipstick now, if you remember.
Yes,
And
I do.
so I I also was not very good, but there were definitely a lot of rounds that I should have won. And even so, looking back at that with the knowledge that I have now, I know there were rounds I should have won and I didn't because probably bias. And even so, I changed how I dress. And even debating at a similar level that I did my first tournament, I lost some, but I won a lot more. And I don't know if that is because of bias. I don't know if it is because of how I dressed, but there may be some bias related to that. I dress in skirts now. I wear heels now. I wear red lipstick. I do my makeup a lot more femininely. Like, there's a lot of things you need to accommodate for based on where you are. And I think that's a lot because in debate, you need to change how you dress some. And that made, like, even though you are not supposed to be ranked based on how you dress, how you look, a lot of judges will look at you and think, oh, she's a woman. And some people will think that they will think of you differently because of how you look. And especially starting around, they're going to look at you, they're going to think, oh, she looks powerful. If they look at you and think that at the beginning of a round, they're going to think of you higher.
I think that's a really important point because clothing is this thing that is always brought up at the beginning of speech season, right? I feel like everyone has had that talk with their coach where it's, oh, what do I wear to tournaments, especially when you're a novice just starting out? And I personally feel that that's actually a really common story because another girl that I talked about who also did LD debate also mentioned how sometimes clothing gets factored in. And I like how your story specifically, you kind of had this transformation of coming into more of your femininity. And maybe
Mm-hmm.
it's just the confidence factor that's also boosted you now, especially with that. So, I mean, keep wearing bold red lipstick. It looks amazing on you.
Thank
And I just
you.
think that's a really interesting, more of a subliminal issue since it's not really brought up most cases, but it does factor into the decision sometimes. And sadly, I feel that it shouldn't be, especially since not everyone has access to the same clothes, but that is a reality. And I think the best way to probably solve that is to leverage your community and those around you to help you get those if possible. Does your school do anything like that?
So my school, we actually offer, like, for those who don't have access to clothing, like our theater program, we do have like clothes that you can look at and you can take and wear to tournaments. So we have like an entire rack of suits that people can look at and wear and borrow and actually keep if needed. So we have access to clothing for speech and debate, especially like we have black suits, we have colored suits, we have hand-me-down suits. Like, people have access to the clothing that they need. We have skirts, we have dresses, we have suits and ties, we have a range of suits handed down from previous debaters, from previous speakers. Like, it's all good clothing.
That's amazing. I really love that. And my school has a similar one. I don't think quite as varied as that one from what it sounds, but I think it's really important to at least have some sort of backup. And I know a lot of schools do that, and I think it's always great to add to it. So if anyone, like, I know that I'll be giving up some of my old competition clothes as well, just to donate to local centers. And I think that everyone should do that if possible to help out others. And have you ever had any female mentors in debate? I know you mentioned a couple people on your team before, maybe your sister, but if you did, how do you think that affected your journey? Did you find that it was helpful to talk to them, or was it more of just having someone to relate to?
So I did have a couple female mentors. So I had two mainly. So they were both captains on the debate team, and they are very near and dear to my heart. So one of them, Mia, she was a PF captain, and I learned from her first because I actually started out in PF before I switched over to LD. My first tournament, I actually did both. It was very difficult, to say the least.
That sounds
And
scary.
then, yeah, and then my second mentor was Alexandra, and she was a LD captain, and so she just graduated this recent year. And so both of those mentors, they really helped me out, and they're great resources as people I could go to if I needed help with anything, like if I needed them to look over a case, if I needed to learn another concept, or even if I just needed to talk about something from the tournament, or even if I just needed help with a personal problem. They were there for anything I needed. Like having someone in the debate world that you can talk about on a personal level, on a debate level, and on an intellectual level is so important, especially as a woman in debate.
Amazing. I think that's really important, to have these mentors and at least people that you can have around you and to support you. And it really does help if they are the same gender, since I think you can just relate a lot more to them. But also thinking of this topic of trying to get more girls into debates and thinking about the factors that might discourage them, what are other factors maybe that you think are preventing more girls from getting into this, whether that's on access to resources, not having these mentors, or even something else, maybe subliminal factors or stereotypes that girls seem to internalize and that maybe deter them from pursuing debates.
I feel like a lot of it is what is seen when you think of debate. Like, whenever you think of a debater, you think presidential debates, you think it's some man on a stage talking. A lot of the things you think of stereotypes with debaters, you don't think of women. And that's a stereotype that I want to change, especially. Like, you don't see a lot of female mentors when you think of debate. And that's something that I think deters a lot of females from going into debate. And so, whenever we were recruiting this year, I made it a point, we have a lot of female captains on our team. And I made it a point to say, hey, I am a debate captain. And say, hey, would you like to join debate? I work with a lot of debaters. I am an LD captain. I went to nationals, this, that, and the other. So, I think it's really important to show visibility and show that women are in the debate world. Because if we don't show visibility and show that they are here, people aren't going to think about it and they're going to be discouraged and think, what if I'm the only one?
Definitely. And even just thinking back to it was the first Republican presidential debate, not sure if you watched that, but yeah, like Nikki Haley was the only woman up on that stage and everyone else was a man. So we're still seeing that lack of representation today. And yeah, it's really important to kind of build it up locally, since once you see other students in your school that are females and also doing it, it will incentivize more girls to do that. But I know you just mentioned that you'll go up to people and tell them that you're a captain of your debate team. Um,
Mm-hmm.
what are some other strategies that you implement on your team to get more people to join and increase retention?
So, to get people to join, we really have like kind of a targeted recruiting way. What we do is we put up flyers, we do a Google Forms, and then we hold a meeting. And so what we do is we either do speeches from debaters and we say, this is how debate has affected me. It's improved my speaking skills. It's improved how I think. It's caused me to have better self-confidence. It's improved my demeanor. It's done this, that, and the other. And speechers, if they don't want to give their speech, they'll talk about tournaments. They'll talk about how it's helped them specifically. And we talk about the benefits of speech and debate, and we talk about why people should join and how it's improved people on a mental level, on a confidence level, and how it's going to help people in the long term. Like, I don't know if you know this, in Huntington, we have a college in our town called Marshall University, and we have a full ride scholarship called the Jaeger Scholar. And so two of our last year captains got the Jaeger Scholar. And so we touched on that specifically because the only people that got the scholarship were captains from our team. And so it's a major factor. It helps with college applications. It really shows that you have the drive and that you can commit to something.
Yes, I think that is so, so important to convey to other students how this is not just some high school competition. These are skills that we're teaching you now that will help you for the rest of your life. And that is by no means an exaggeration, since I know that other people have gone on to pursue careers in communication just from speech and debate. And even if they don't go into that sort of field, I know they still do public speaking and it helps them in numerous ways, whether it's with interviews, maybe for scholarships, or even just communicating their ideas on a science project, and that's the difference between them and another person winning. So I think that's amazing how you highlight those testimonials. That's something that my school does as well. Um, but just on a more local level, do you think there are any differences in debating in West Virginia compared to across the rest of the country? Do you all have different rules there? And how has that affected you when you've gone on to maybe more national tournaments? Has there been a big disparity in the styles you see or even the rules that are being implemented?
So I think the main difference is because it's going from a traditional to a progressive bracket. It's mainly in the styles that you're going to see. So from traditional to progressive, you're going to see people talking like this whenever they're speaking. So they're not going to talk very fast. They'll talk at a decent speed, but some people will talk at this speed when they're reading through their speeches. But whenever people actually talk in a progressive bracket, 9 times out of 10, you can't actually understand what they're saying. And so, coming from a traditional bracket, they're actually case sharing. You don't do that in a traditional bracket. And judges from a traditional bracket will actually judge you on whether or not they can understand you. And so, even being from a traditional bracket, I talk fast from as a debater in West Virginia. Like, even so, in Appalachia, I talk fast. And so, basically, in a progressive bracket, it's very hard for me to keep up. Um, as it is, the main thing is case sharing and how they format their cases. At national, something I noticed is people would have like long lines of text and then they would highlight words, like big sections of words, and just like make them bigger and then just have like itty bitty bits of words next to it. And I was really looking at that. I was wondering, why didn't you just type out your case?
Yeah.
Like, to me, it's completely different because the way they do it is styled differently. And it may be like it's a prep school, they do it differently from a public school. The way I'm taught it may be different, but the styles of and the ways it's done is just completely different. It's just odd.
Absolutely. That was the exact same reaction I had when I first went against a progressive debater, and it was actually at our NSDA qualifying tournament in our state. And I remember that was the last round that I had of the tournament. I was like, I had no idea how I was doing the entire time, but after I stepped in that room, I was like, oh no. I thought I was gonna lose because the judge said that he could handle technical and progressive uh debating styles and arguments, and he liked speed. I was like, oh no, like I'm doomed. But then afterwards, I ended up winning the round to my surprise. I was like
Mm-hmm.
absolutely blown away since I couldn't understand half of what that person had said, and we didn't case share either, so I was just completely lost. But I think what won me that round and what the judge said in their ballot afterwards was that even though I may not have understood like every line of every card that that person said. It was just the general ideas and understanding how to refute his logic that won me the case. And I think that's really the basics of debate. So I think for anyone that goes against someone progressive and is from a traditional league at first, I'd say don't be afraid because at the end of the day, judges will understand. They know if you're perhaps from a more traditional league, they won't hold that against you. But oftentimes you can leverage what you've already learned and still win the round, since debate is debate at the end of the day. And sometimes you can come across as perhaps more emotionally um, significant in like your arguments just from that and win the round that way. So yeah, I'm not sure if you've had any of those experiences at all.
Yeah. It's definitely important to stay level-headed the entire
Mhm.
time because sometimes, especially if you go for an argument and you go for a point in their logic that they don't think you're going to go for, they will get very heated.
Yes.
Yes.
uh, no, fun times, but hopefully, I won't be that blindsided again, and I know that you'll be prepared in the future as well, Audrey.
Oh,
Um,
definitely.
but How do you think the debates community then could improve itself to make it more accessible to students of all backgrounds, whether they're from rural places, like your state and mine, or even maybe low income areas, or just places that have never had debate before? Do you think there are any general improvements that maybe the debate community itself can make?
So one thing I think I need to do, especially from a rural community, is teach about progressive and teach about how to refute it, how to actually be prepared for a progressive debater. And also something that the debate community overall can do is be more accepting of traditional debaters because I feel like there is an inherent bias. Say, I'm sorry, I'm from a traditional bracket. Something immediately in a progressive debater's mind is like, oh, this is going to be an easy round. I've seen it in people's faces. Like the amount of times I've walked up to someone and I've gone, I'm sorry, I'm from a traditional bracket. This is what my coach has told me to do. I'm sorry, I'm from a traditional bracket. Would you mind to please reduce spreading as much as you can? I understand your case is long, but please, I'm from a traditional bracket. We don't do that where I'm from. And they go, oh, okay, I'll try. You can hear it in their voice, you can see it in their face, you can tell immediately they think, oh, this is going to be an easy round.
Yes. And
Like, I feel like there's a lot of bias towards
yeah.
traditional debaters.
Mhm. Yeah, and I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with having different styles and being a progressive debater, but I think just that attitude that comes across sometimes, and I've had that same experience as well. Sometimes I'll talk to them and they'll be really cool about it, and they'll like we'll case share and we'll be able to like kind of like prep things out before the round and they won't go as fast as normal. But sometimes, yeah, I've had that experience where they kind of just feel that it is an automatic win and then they just continue spreading. So
Yeah.
it is very disheartening.
Once again, as you said, the attitude that comes with like being against traditional debaters and thinking, oh, it's easy,
Mhm.
there's no issue with having a different style of debating.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, like I think I always just come back to the sentiment that debate really is just debate, and it doesn't matter where you're from, what you've been taught, because at the end of the day, it's the logic and the rhetoric behind that will really make the difference. And I think it's the same for both sides. Like if you're from a traditional league and then going against progressive students, you have to be prepared for that and you have to understand that it's going to be different and you need to adapt. But it's also the
Oh,
same on the
definitely.
flip side for progressive students going against traditional debaters because sometimes they need to adapt to the maybe more traditional judge as well and also understand that they can't just use straight facts to just push them through the round and just case studies the entire time. Since once you get to nationals, that's like for either side, it's not going to work out if you just stick with your own sort of debating style.
Yeah, definitely.
Hmm. Um, and have you ever been able to use your debate experience to talk about important current issues today or share your personal story, anything that's perhaps transformed your life?
I wish I've been able to, but I really haven't. So the only way I've been able to is just honestly in informal ways. Like someone's come up to me and tried to talk about politics, and I've been like, oh, yeah, I've done a case on that. I can definitely talk about this topic. But past that, I really haven't been able to talk about like current issues on a wide scale.
Yeah, I think that's also another area for improvement, I feel. And a lot of times it comes down to also the topic voting, because I know that just from looking at the statistics, sometimes I'm like, oh, that many people didn't vote at all. And a lot of the voters
Definitely.
end up being coaches, and stuff, which is fine, but I still feel that students themselves should have the greater voice in determining what topics that we're debating. I know personally I have missed the deadline on some occasions, but since then I've tried to um, stay on top of it. What did you think of the recent changes to the topics since it was the novice topic that got changed? Um, I don't know if you've seen that yet.
I haven't seen it yet, honestly.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. I've honestly just been focused on my case writing and on my school. I
Valid.
haven't been able to look much past that.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I think topics they're interesting, and sometimes we end up with one that everyone just mutually does not like, which I think is the funniest thing ever, especially when it happens
No,
at
I
a big
totally
tournament like
agree.
the states. But yeah, I think those are all areas for improvement, and hopefully, we'll get more student voice as debate becomes even more popular, and maybe even from more female debaters as well. But if you could sum up your entire public speaking experience in one word or phrase, what would that be and why?
I would have to say roll with the punches
I like
because because a lot of times you don't know what you're going to expect, and even so you're going to get a lot of things that are going to happen that aren't going to be in your favor, and so you got to roll with it and you got to just go with what happens and make the best of each situation. Like, I know I got completely blindsided at nationals, and so every single debate I was hit with a progressive debater, and I know I was not exactly prepared for that. Like, even so, I debated at Durham, and so I interacted with a lot of progressives, but it was at a completely different level. And so every time I tried to get better after each debate, I worked on my case in between every single round and improved my research, bettered my blocks, went over my briefs every single debate. And so I kept rolling with the punches and trying to do my best to keep up with every single debate. So just to every debater out there, keep rolling with it.
So, so true. I really like how you brought up that phrase because that is so applicable in debate at any tournament. I can assure you that I have also done the exact same thing where it's just trying to adapt and think on my feet and of course working on my case in between rounds when I probably should be eating. Um
Of course.
But yeah, thank you so much for talking with me today. I loved getting to hear your story and takes on a lot of these issues that are affecting the debate community today and seeing what kind of solutions that you've thought of. This is really great advice, I think, for anyone. So thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thanks for listening to this episode. If you have any comments, questions, or emotional outbursts, feel free to follow the SpeakOut campaign on Instagram at speakout_speech and our website, speakoutspeech.org. See you in the next episode.